On Christmas Eve, I stood outside my sister's glass door, watching the golden lights reflect on their red sweaters. My daughter was absent. "Noelle isn't invited," my sister had said, her voice as cold as company policy. "She ruins the atmosphere." They didn't know the gift bag I clutched didn't hold cookies. It held the switch that would recalibrate this entire family and the company they were running. My name is Rhea Dalton. I am 36 years old. I am a compliance manager at Harbor and Field Wellness, which is just a sterile, leafy name for a company owned by my sister's husband, subsidized by my sister's family trust, and staffed, until 2 years ago, by my husband, now my ex-husband. And tonight, in Grey Rock, Michigan, the temperature was 12 degrees and dropping. The air didn't just bite, it clamped down, a physical weight on my lungs. The heat in my old Honda was fighting a losing battle against the night. The wipers scraped rhythmically against a thin film of ice. Beside me, my daughter, Noelle, 14, was tracing a frost pattern on the passenger window with a gloved finger. She was clutching her knit hat in her lap so tightly her knuckles were white. "Mom, are you sure?" Her voice was small, muffled by the wool scarf pulled high on her face. It was the voice she used when she was trying to be brave, the one that splintered my heart every time. "Sure about what, honey?" I asked, keeping my own voice level. I knew what. "About this, about me." She looked from the house, lit up like a holiday beacon, all warmth and gold, back to me. "They really don't want me." It wasn't a question, it was a statement, a verdict delivered by her own family, on Christmas Eve. My phone, sitting cold in the cup holder, buzzed, a heavy, angry vibration. I didn't need to look. I knew the sender. Laurel, my older sister, the chief financial officer, the self-appointed matriarch of the Keene dynasty. I picked it up anyway. The screen's light was painfully bright in the dark car. The text message had been sent an hour ago, while we were still at home, packing the gifts I now held. I had read it then, and I read it again. "Rhea, to confirm our conversation, Noelle is not to come tonight. She was overhearing adult business at the office last week, and it's inappropriate. We can't have this tension at Christmas. This tension, not their tension, not their fraud. This tension, as if my daughter's presence was a contaminant. Inappropriate. The word was clinical, sterile, the kind of word Laurel used in quarterly reports right before announcing layoffs. Overhearing was Laurel's word for witnessing. Adult business was her word for felony. "Laurel is wrong," I said, my voice flatter than I intended. "But Evan is in there," Noelle whispered, her father. "He didn't text me." "He's busy," I lied. It was a weak, pathetic lie. I killed the engine. The sudden silence was heavier than the cold. "Stay here a minute," I whispered. I got out. The wind hit me instantly, a physical slap. It sliced through my wool coat, stinging my eyes until they watered. I walked across the frozen lawn, the crunch of icy grass loud as breaking glass under my boots. I stopped at the wide picture window, keeping just to the side, in the shadows of a manicured blue spruce. It was perfect, a curated scene from a magazine, the kind their company, Harbor and Field, tried to sell: wellness, family, wholeness. The tree, a towering Fraser fir, was dripping in white gold lights and silver ornaments. The dining table, a massive, reclaimed wood piece that Laurel always boasted was distressed, was set for 20. Silver chargers, blood-red napkins, crystal glasses that cost more than my car payment. And the place cards. My stomach tightened into a knot of ice. Laurel always hand-lettered them in gold calligraphy. I could see them from here, shimmering in the candlelight. Grant, Laurel, Evan, Constance. I scanned the entire length of the polished wood. My name was there, tucked neatly between an empty chair and my ex-husband. But there was no Noelle. Not just uninvited, erased. They hadn't even set a place, just in case. Inside, the scene was alive. My brother-in-law, Grant, the CEO, was pouring a deep red wine. My aunt was laughing, a shrill sound I could almost hear through the double-paned glass. And there was Evan, my ex-husband. He was standing next to Laurel by the fireplace, laughing. He ran a hand through his hair. That same nervous, charming gesture he always used when he was trying to please her. He looked relaxed, untroubled. He caught Laurel's eye and raised his glass in a small, silent toast. He hadn't just agreed to this, he was complicit in it. He was choosing the warmth, the wine, the acceptance of the family that paid his salary over his own daughter, who was sitting 50 feet away in a cold car. There would be no negotiation. He wouldn't defend her. He never had. I walked back. Each step was heavy. The cold was so deep it felt like it was inside my bones, but my blood was hot. I felt a strange, sharp clarity. The kind compliance work gives you. You read the regulation. You see the violation. You execute the remediation. I opened the car door. The dome light illuminated Noelle's pale face. Her eyes were fixed on the house. "He's laughing," she said. She didn't have to point. I took a deep breath. "He is..." I didn't try to defend him. Not anymore. I pulled out my phone, ignoring the frozen stiffness in my fingers, and typed in a new message. I sent Noelle the address. 1422 Alder Street. "Mom, what's this?" "It's the empty house, sweetie, the one I rented this morning." I forwarded her the text with the keypad code, 4718. "I want you to go there now." Her eyes widened. "Alone? On Christmas?" "It's not empty." I forced my voice to stay calm, steady. The lie was precise. "I promise. I stocked the fridge this afternoon while you were at your friend's. All your favorites. Mac and cheese, the good kind. That sparkling cranberry juice you like. I set up the smart TV with every movie service we have, and Mrs. Petrov's number, the neighbor, is on the counter. Just in case. But you won't need it." This was the part of the plan that had to work. The logistics of the counter move. Noelle stared at the address. She knew Alder Street. It was on the other side of town. The side where the hourly workers from the harbor and field plant lived. The people whose holiday bonuses had just been deferred by her Aunt Laurel. She processed it. The hurt was still there, a raw wound. But something else was hardening in her expression. My daughter. She had my spine, not Evan's. She finally looked up, her gaze meeting mine. The tears welled, bright and hot in the cold, and she refused to let them fall. She just swallowed. A hard, painful gulp. "I'm fine, Mom." Her voice was stronger now. "I'll go. I'm fine. But you have to promise me something." "Anything." "Promise me you won't let them do this again." Her voice dropped. "That you won't let them just walk all over you, like always." Like always. The words hit harder than the wind. She saw it. She saw all of it. She saw my compromises. She saw me swallowing Laurel's suggestions at the office. She saw me accepting Evan's excuses for 2 years. She saw me shrinking, day after day, just to keep a fragile peace that was never peaceful at all, just quiet oppression. I reached across the console and took her gloved hand. Her skin was cold, even through the wool. "Noelle, look at me." She did. Her eyes were clear. "I am not going into that house to eat dinner." I held her gaze. "I am not going in to apologize for you. I am not going in to make peace for Christmas." I squeezed her hand. My own voice was low, tight, colder than the air. "I'm going in to finish this." Her eyes searched mine, and she saw it. The end of the compliance, the beginning of the audit. She nodded. "Once, sharp?" "Okay," she whispered. "Be safe, Mom." "You too. Text me when you're in. Text me if you need anything. Lock the door." "I will." She slid out of the passenger seat and into the driver's side. She'd had her permit for 6 months. The drive was 10 minutes, all quiet streets. She was a good driver. I watched her buckle up, her small face illuminated by the dashboard lights. I closed the car door. The sound was heavy, final, a thud that echoed in the frozen quiet. She started the engine, turned on the headlights, and pulled away from the curb. I watched her red taillights disappear around the corner, leaving me alone on the dark street. I stood there until the sound of her engine was gone. From inside Laurel's house, the muffled sound of music started, a choir. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright. It sounded like a threat. I turned toward the house. My face was numb. My resolve was a core of ice. I pulled the gift bag from the back seat, its contents heavy, and walked up the stone path toward the golden light, the smell of pine, and the family that thought they had already won. I rang the doorbell. The sound was a sharp, digital chime, cutting through the muffled bass of Jingle Bell Rock that had replaced the choir. The heavy oak door felt solid, impenetrable, a prop for a stage set. I was standing on the heated slate porch of the house my ex-husband and I were supposed to buy, before the divorce, before he traded up, not just for a new partner, but for a new family, the Keens. Harbor and Field Wellness. It sounds like a sanctuary, a place of calm. It's not. It's a privately held corporation built on my sister's trust fund and her husband's ruthless ambition. Laurel Keene, my sister, is the CFO, her husband, Grant, is the CEO, and my ex-husband, Evan, is the supply chain project lead, a title invented for him, a reward for his loyalty. When Evan and I split, the divorce was a financial amputation. I was a 34-year-old single mother with a resume gap and a mortgage to cover. Laurel offered me a job. Compliance manager, she'd said, as if bestowing a great gift. The benefits are excellent. Rhea. For Noelle. She was right. The health insurance was platinum tier. The 401k match was generous. So I took it. Work is just work. I told myself every single morning for 2 years. I repeated it like a mantra as I walked past the lobby wall. It was made of reclaimed barn wood, and stenciled on it, in a soft, flowing white script, was the company motto, kindness and transparency. I learned within a week that Harbor and Field practiced neither. We're not a company, we're a family. Grant would boom at the quarterly all-hands meetings. That was the lie that let them get away with everything. Families. You see, don't have boundaries. Families demand total loyalty. Families keep secrets. Families can ask you to work weekends for the good of the team, without overtime. And families, as Laurel often demonstrated, can forgive or punish at their discretion. My job, compliance, was a joke to them, a box to be ticked. I was the family member they had to invite but didn't want. I was the one who read the fine print. I was the one who flagged the unsustainable sourcing in their sustainable product line. I was the one who pointed out that their wellness initiatives didn't meet OSHA standards. Most of my reports were filed for later review, which was Laurel's term for burying them in a digital graveyard. Until last week. The memory was sharp, bitter, like the cold air in my lungs, the office holiday party, mandatory cheer, bad catering, a theme of winter wellness. Noelle had come with me. She was supposed to go to Evans, but he'd canceled. A supply chain emergency that I knew meant a last-minute shopping trip with his new girlfriend. So Noelle came to the office, her arms full of the gingerbread cookies we'd baked, her face bright with excitement. She loved the adult world of the office, the clicking keyboards, the spinny chairs. "Mom, these cookies are heavy. Where does the food go?" "Kitchenette, sweetie. End of the hall. Go ahead. I'll catch up." She'd turned the corner, and I'd been trapped by Grant, holding a glass of cheap Prosecco. "Rhea! Great party, right? The team really outdid themselves." I smiled. I listened, and then I realized Noelle hadn't come back. I found her 5 minutes later. She was standing frozen in the hallway, 10 feet from the kitchenette. The tray of cookies was tilted in her hands. She was pale, her eyes wide, staring at the door to Laurel's personal office. It was ajar, just enough for the voices to slice through the party music. Laurel's voice, "Don't care what the meters say. You adjust the water wastage data. 40%. Grant's voice, lower, angry, Laurel, that's not an adjustment. That's fiction. The auditors, the investors want to see green metrics. They want to see progress on the sustainability goals we promised them. They don't want to see a 40% overage. It spooks them. It kills the next round of funding. And if we get caught? We won't. Ria's team already filed their initial report. We'll just correct it, blame a faulty meter, sign the revised summary. Grant, we're a family. We handle this, internally. A pause, a pen scratching on paper. This feels wrong, Grant muttered. It feels like keeping your CEO title, Laurel snapped. Noelle backed away, her shoes scuffing the carpet. The voices stopped. The door was pulled shut with a soft, expensive click. She looked at me, her face a mask of confusion. Mom? What's wastage data? They sounded like they were cheating, like in school, when kids change their grades. My blood went cold. I knew exactly what she was talking about. It was my report, my team's report. The one showing our Michigan plant was dumping thousands of gallons of untreated wastewater. The one I had personally flagged as a potential EPA violation. I took the cookies from her. Let's go home. Sweetie, the party's over. I did my job. That night, after Noelle was asleep, I logged back into the system. I escalated the file. I attached my original, unaltered report, flagged the discrepancy with Laurel's revised numbers, and sent it up the chain. The chain, I had forgotten, ended with the board, and the board was chaired by Constance Vale, Laurel's godmother. The private chat was the next morning, 8 a.m., before anyone else arrived. Laurel's office was all white and glass, overlooking the frozen river. She was smiling, holding a ceramic mug that said, "Girl Boss." Grant was there, staring out the window. "Ria, dear," Laurel began, her voice syrupy sweet. "You seem to have overstepped. Your team's initial data was raw, unrefined. We simply finalized it." "The numbers were finalized, Laurel. They were just wrong," I said. "They were the numbers we needed," Grant cut in, still looking at the river. "It's about the narrative. Ria, the investors need the right narrative." "My job isn't narrative. It's compliance. It's the law." Laurel's smile thinned. "Ria, this is a family company. We handle things differently. Your report, this, escalation, it's so aggressive. It's not collaborative. It's not kind." She used the motto against me, kindness. "I'm suggesting," she continued, "that you retract the escalation, issue a statement saying your team miscalibrated the meters. We'll replace them. We'll all move on." "You want me to file a false report?" I said. It wasn't a question. "I want you to be a team player," Laurel snapped, her patience gone. "I want you to think about this family, about Evan, about Noelle." She let the name hang in the air. "Speaking of Noelle," Laurel said, her voice turning to ice, "it's come to my attention she was listening to private executive conversations, poking her nose where it doesn't belong. She was bringing cookies to the kitchen. Laurel, your door was open." "She's a curious child, isn't she?" Laurel said. It wasn't a compliment. It was an accusation. She was turning my daughter's innocence into a crime. A curious child, a spy, a threat. That was the moment I understood. I stood up. "I won't be retracting the report." Laurel's face went blank. The family mask dropped. I was looking at the CFO. "I think you will," she said. The pressure campaign began an hour later. First, Evan, at my desk. "Ria, come on, just fix it. What's the big deal? You're making everyone uncomfortable." Then, my aunt, a text. "Heard there's trouble at the office. Don't embarrass the family. Ria, Laurel has been so good to you." Then, my uncle, a voicemail. "Ria, Grant is a good man. Don't make this a legal thing. Think of the jobs. Think of the family's reputation." They all fell in line, the entire clan, parroting the same message. Don't embarrass the family. Don't make this a problem, not during the holidays. And now, Standing on this frozen porch, I heard the final move in their game, the text message from Laurel. Noelle is not to come tonight. It wasn't a punishment for Noelle. It was a punishment for me. It was the final turn of the screw. Fall in line, Rhea. Sign the false report, or your daughter is cast out. They thought they were just barring her from a holiday dinner. They thought they were protecting their company. But I'm the compliance manager. I know exactly what they're protecting. It isn't their reputation, it's their freedom. They aren't afraid of an embarrassing dinner with the family. They're afraid of an audit. They're afraid of the SEC. They're afraid of jail. And I, the rule keeper, the quiet one, the one they hired for appearances, had just become the only person who could grant them absolution or burn them to the ground. The door opened. Laurel stood there, bathed in the golden light. She was wearing a red cashmere dress that probably cost my monthly salary. Her smile was brittle, perfect. "Rhea," she said, her voice a warm performance for the guests behind her. "You came. We were so worried you'd be upset." "Upset?" I asked, stepping over the threshold, my coat still on. The heat from the house was immediate, suffocating. I held up the heavy gift bag. "Why would I be upset? It's Christmas." "Of course I came," I said, unbuttoning my coat. I handed Laurel the hostess gift I'd brought, an expensive, bland bottle of Chardonnay I knew she'd re-gift, the heavy gift bag in my other hand, the one from the car. I kept, "It's family." My voice was smooth. I was the compliance manager. My job was to smile while delivering bad news, to remain calm while everything was on fire. Tonight, my job was to be the perfect, slightly penitent sister. Laurel's eyes flickered to my empty hands. "No, Noelle, I see. Wise choice. Rhea, it's for the best. Avoids any awkwardness." "She found somewhere else to be," I said, my voice neutral. "Oh?" Laurel's interest was minimal. A problem solved. "A friend's house? Good. Now, come in. Get a drink. Evan is over by the fire. Try not to make it weird." She swept away, a ripple of red cashmere, all command and condescension. I walked past the towering, perfectly decorated tree, my gaze sweeping the room. Grant, Evan, my aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole machinery of the family, oiled and running, blissfully unaware of the audit I was about to perform. My mind wasn't here. It was miles away, on the other side of Grey Rock, on Alder Street. The empty house, as I'd called it for Noelle, was number 1422. It was a small, beige-sided bungalow, unremarkable in every way, which made it perfect. It was a monthly rental, managed by a community housing fund I'd been donating to for years. I'd called them at 9 a.m. this morning, right after the private chat with Laurel. "I need a place," I told the director. "A community-use space, just for a few days. An emergency." "We have the bungalow on Alder," he'd said. "It's between tenants. The heat is on. It's clean." I'd signed the lease digitally and picked up the key at 11 a.m. Laurel and Grant thought my only weapon was a single, escalated report. They thought the battle was contained within their servers. They never considered I'd move the conflict to the real world. While Noelle was at her friend's house this afternoon, just for an hour, I'd told her, a small lie to cover the bigger one, I had gone to 1422 Alder. It wasn't empty when I left. I had filled the refrigerator, not with a feast, but with comfort. 3 kinds of macaroni and cheese, because I couldn't remember which was her favorite. The cranberry ginger ale she loved, a gallon of chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream, a bag of mandarin oranges. I'd strung a single line of warm white fairy lights around the living room window, a tiny defense against the dark. I'd logged into our Netflix, Hulu, and HBO Max accounts on the small television the fund kept there. I'd made sure the Wi-Fi password was on a bright yellow sticky note on the counter. And on that counter, I'd left a small, wrapped gift box. It wasn't a Christmas present. It was a supply kit. Inside, Noelle would find a heavy-duty portable power bank, fully charged, a new electric kettle, a large vacuum-sealed glass jar of the homemade chicken and vegetable soup I'd made late last night, after I'd filed my report, when I knew the war had begun. Beside the soup was a card, a plain white card, with my handwriting inside. Noel. I know this isn't the Christmas you wanted, but it's the one we're going to make. Plug in the soup pot. Heat this. Eat. You are not alone. If you start to feel lonely, even for a second, open the Alder group on your FaceTime. I love you. I'm proud of you. Be the host. Mom. Noelle would be confused, for a moment. Be the host? She would check her FaceTime. She'd see the new group I'd created an hour ago. The Alder group. The members were not her school friends. The members were Marco Diaz, Sanaya Washington, Tom Kovac, Ilara Pham. 4 names Laurel and Grant would only know from a payroll spreadsheet. They were 4 of the most senior line workers from the Harbor and Field plant. 4 families who lived within a 5-block radius of 1422 Alder Street. And they were the 4 families whose holiday bonuses, the ones they counted on for property taxes, for car repairs, for Christmas, had been indefinitely deferred 2 weeks ago. Laurel had announced it in a sterile corporate email, citing unexpected operational headwinds and failure to meet our ambitious sustainability targets. It was a lie. I'd seen the numbers. Their bonuses were cut to offset the exact amount Laurel and Grant needed to install the new water filtration system they should have installed last year, the one they were now lying about to investors. They weren't deferred, they were stolen. Stolen by Laurel to cover her own fraud. I had invited them, not as a charity case, not as a soup kitchen, but as a gathering. I had texted Sanaya Washington this afternoon. Sania, it's Rhea Dalton from Compliance. I know this is strange, but I've rented a small house on Alder for a potluck tonight. I have soup and bread. My daughter is there. We'd be honored if you and your family could join us. 7 p.m. 1422, Alder. I sent the same text to Marco, to Tom, to Ilara. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I eased it out, angling my body away from the fireplace. A text from Noelle. Mom, I'm here. I plugged in the soup. A pause. Then, someone just knocked. It's a lot of people, with Tupperware. My breath hitched. They'd come. I saw it in my mind. Noelle, my shy, brave daughter, opening the door. The Diaz family, with their tamales. Sania, with her famous 7-layer dip. The Kovacs, with a pierogi casserole. Ilara Pham, with a box of pastries from her family's bakery. Noelle wasn't the banished child. She wasn't the lonely victim. She was the host. She was the center of a different kind of family, a real one. A community bound not by blood or a stock option agreement, but by the shared, quiet truth of being wronged by the people in this overheated, glittering room. The kitchen at 1422. Alder would be warm. It would be crowded. It would smell like chicken soup and tamales and coffee. It would be alive. Here, in Laurel's house, the air was still. It was suffocatingly hot, but emotionally frozen. It smelled of pine-scented candles and expensive perfume. It was bright, dazzling, and as cold as a quarterly earnings report, as cold as my sister's heart. Rhea, stop hovering by the door and put that under the tree, Laurel called out, pointing to the gift bag I still held. Right, I said. I walked over, my movements calm and deliberate. I knelt, placing the heavy bag next to a mountain of perfectly wrapped gifts, and as I did, I activated my phone again. I wasn't texting Noelle this time. I opened my corporate calendar. I scrolled past the Keen Family Christmas dinner entry Laurel had sent to my work email. I found the appointment I had made at 8:45 a.m. this morning, right after Laurel had threatened me. The title was simple, Orbital Meeting. It was scheduled for 8:30 p.m., tonight. The invite list was small, just 2 names, plus my own. Constance Vale, chairwoman of the board, and Arthur Jacobs, independent board member. Laurel thought she controlled the board through her godmother, but I knew Constance Vale didn't get to be chairwoman by prioritizing sentiment. She prioritized profit. She prioritized not going to jail. I had included a one-line agenda on the meeting invite. Urgent review of Q4 sustainability data and potential SEC exposure. Laurel had no idea this meeting was happening. She thought I was isolated. She thought I was checking on my daughter. I was checking my calendar. I was activating the other switch. I stood up, brushing a non-existent piece of lint from my black dress. I turned to my sister, who was laughing with Evan. I smiled. "Laurel," I said, my voice clear and light. "The tree looks beautiful. Can I get you a drink?" She thought the game was over. She didn't even know we'd started. "A Chardonnay, of course." Laurel turned back to her guests. The crisis of my arrival apparently averted. I moved against the current of guests, heading toward the kitchen. The house was a performance of abundance. Garlands of real pine dripped from the doorways, and the air was thick with the competing, cloying scents of cinnamon, roasting meat, and Laurel's expensive perfume. I found the tray of gingerbread cookies I'd brought in. It was a required offering. "My admission ticket," Laurel insisted. I picked it up. This was my purpose. This was my key. I walked into the formal dining room. It was empty, a silent, glittering stage waiting for the actors. The long, distressed wood table was set, precisely. As I'd seen from the window, every place had a heavy silver charger, a blood-red napkin, and a small, cream-colored tent card. I leaned in, pretending to fuss with the cookies, placing them on the buffet. Laurel had outdone herself. Each name was written in her perfect, flowing gold calligraphy: Grant, Evan, Aunt Mary, Uncle Robert, and in the corner of each card, a small, complex QR code. I knew exactly what it was. Laurel had bragged about it in a company-wide email. "For a personal touch, scan your card for your 2025 Christmas wish." I'd scanned the one on my desk at work. It linked to a tacky, algorithm-generated Spotify playlist. It was frivolous. It was modern. It was pretentious. And it was the most brilliant delivery system I could have ever asked for. My hand slipped into the pocket of my black dress. My fingers found the 4 cards I'd printed late last night in my own office, on the same high-grade cardstock Laurel ordered for the executive team. I was the compliance manager. I knew the supply codes for everything. I'd stayed up until 3 a.m., not writing reports, but in a plain-text HTML editor, building a website. My cookies were the perfect cover. I walked the length of the table, pretending to straighten the forks, placing a gingerbread man on each plate. My movements were fluid, smooth. No one was watching. I reached Grant's seat. I placed a cookie. My left hand dropped the duplicate card. My right hand palmed the original. I moved to Laurel's seat. Cookie, swap. I moved to Evan's. Cookie, swap. I moved to the head of the table, the seat of power, still empty, waiting for the chairwoman, Constance Vale. Cookie, swap. 4 seconds. 4 acts of replacement. The originals were now in my pocket. The new ones sat in their place, identical in every way, the gold calligraphy. I'd had to forge. It was passable. The QR codes, however, were masterpieces. Laurel's code sent you to a playlist. My code sent you to a payload. I'd registered the domain at 3:15 a.m. kindnessmeanscounting.org. It wasn't a flashy site. It was clean. It was cold. It looked like an internal audit portal. It had the Harbor and Field Wellness logo at the top. And below it, 2 columns. Column A, submitted sustainability data. Q4. This was Laurel's adjusted fiction, the 40% reduction, the green metrics. Column B, original metered data. Q4. This was my team's real report, the 40% overage, the raw illegal wastewater numbers. Beside them, a scanned copy of the email I'd received, the one from Grant, authorizing Laurel's correction, his signature, clear as day. At the very top of the page, a simple JavaScript clock. It was counting down. This site will be made public, and a copy will be forwarded to the SEC whistleblower portal and the EPA Region 5 Enforcement Office, IN. The timer was synchronized to the atomic clock. It was set to hit 0 at 8:32 p.m. tonight. Unless, of course, someone entered the cancellation code, a small, simple text box at the bottom of the page, a code that only I possessed, a code I had no intention of using. My first Chekhov's gun was on the table, aimed at the heart of the company. "Dinner in 10 minutes, Laurel's voice boomed. "We're just waiting on Constance. Let's do the white elephant exchange while we wait." A ripple of false excitement. I returned to the living room, my task complete. The heavy gift bag I had placed under the tree earlier was my second gun. "Rhea, bring your gift over," Laurel directed, pointing to the pile. I retrieved it. The gift was for the family game, $20 limit. Mine was a snow globe. I'd bought it at a gas station on the way here. It was cheap, tacky plastic, with a poorly painted snowman on skis inside. When you shook it, the snow was just iridescent glitter. But I had made an adjustment. Late last night, I had carefully pried open the plastic base. Inside, in the hollow cavity, I had used a dot of superglue to affix a single, black micro SD card. I'd resealed it. The card was invisible, tucked behind the snowman's base. It was the recording. When Noelle had told me what she heard at the party, I'd been horrified, but I was also a compliance officer. I told her to get her coat, and as she walked away, I had walked back toward Laurel's office. I didn't go in. I just stood in the hall, my phone in my coat pocket, the voice memo app running. I had caught the last 3 minutes, the vital part. Grant's voice. "Just adjust it. The investors want green." Laurel's voice. "Sign the summary. Grant, I'll handle the rest." Grant's. "This is fraud." Laurel. Laurel's. "It's family." Grant, sign it. The file was named GL Audit Final, Wave, and it was now resting inside a tacky snowman. I placed the snow globe on the pile. "Wonderful," Laurel said, not looking at it. "Evan, draw a number." As my ex-husband reached for the bowl, I slipped back into the hallway, toward the powder room. The light was dim. I pulled out my phone. My fingers were ice cold, but they didn't shake. I sent a text to Noelle. "Start eating before 8:30. I'll call you around then. I love you." I waited. 1 second, 2. The phone vibrated. A new message. It wasn't a text. It was a photo. My breath caught. It was the small, beige-sided living room on Alder Street, but it wasn't empty. It was full. It was packed. The photo was a panorama, a bit blurry, taken by someone laughing. I saw Marco Diaz, holding his smallest son. I saw Sania Washington, her arms around 2 other women, all of them roaring with laughter. I saw Tom Kovac at the table, which was buried under a mountain of food in Tupperware. Mismatched casserole dishes and bakery boxes. And in the center, holding up a paper cup in a toast, was Noelle. Her cheeks were flushed pink, her hair was messy, her eyes, which had been so dull and hurt in the car, were bright. She was smiling, a real, wide, uncomplicated smile. The empty house was the fullest place I had ever seen. I put the phone back in my pocket. A wave of calm, cold, and absolute certainty washed over me. I wasn't just doing this for compliance. I wasn't just doing this for revenge. I was doing this for them. I walked back into the living room. The smell of cinnamon was overwhelming. I picked up my untouched glass of water. Laurel, holding a glass of wine, caught my eye. She was watching me, her gaze sharp, suspicious. She thought I was mourning my daughter's absence. She thought I was weak. "Rhea," she said, her voice a sharp, quiet command that cut through the party noise. "Do try not to spill that. It's vintage." "I won't," I said, meeting her gaze. "I wouldn't want to make a mess." "Dinner is served," Laurel announced, clapping her hands. Her charm switched back on to full power. The family, conditioned by years of these commands, moved obediently toward the dining room. The glittering, silent stage was now full. I found my seat. The name card I had not printed, tucked between Evan and an empty chair I assumed was for Constance. As everyone settled, Grant, at the head of the table, stood. He raised his crystal glass of deep red wine. The room quieted. "To Christmas," he boomed, his CEO voice filling the room. "And to family. In the end, it's the only thing that truly matters." A murmur of, "To family." "Here, here." Glasses clinked. I raised my water glass. My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear, and it cut through the murmurs. "And to transparency," I said. The clinking stopped. A few people looked at me. Evan, beside me, stiffened. "Because family," I continued, meeting Grant's gaze down the length of the table, "shouldn't have to keep secrets." A dead, cold silence. Grant's smile tightened. My aunt cleared her throat. Laurel, from her end of the table, let out a small, brittle laugh. She was a master of deflection, of turning an attack back on the accuser. "Oh, Rhea, always so serious. Compliance manager even at the dinner table." She leaned forward, her red dress a slash of color against the white tablecloth. "Speaking of which, I'm so glad you came, but where is Noelle? I was truly hoping she'd see reason and apologize." I looked at my sister. The room was watching. This was the performance. This was my public shaming. "She's somewhere safe," I said, my voice flat, cold. "Safe?" Laurel pressed, her eyebrows rising in mock concern. "Safe from what, dear? From her own family? From a nice Christmas dinner?" "Rhea, stop." The voice was from my side. Evan. He hadn't looked at me, but he was speaking to me. His voice a low, urgent, embarrassed hiss. "You're overreacting," he muttered, staring at his plate. Laurel explained the whole thing. It's just some numbers on a spreadsheet. You're ruining Christmas over paperwork." Paperwork. I turned my head. Slowly, I looked at my ex-husband, the man who had fathered my child, the man who had sat in a car and let that child believe she was worthless. "It's not just numbers, Evan," I said, my voice quiet, but it carried across the table like a shard of ice. "It's some thousands of families. It's the entire bonus pool for the plant. It's thousands of households on Alder Street who won't have a Christmas because of your paperwork." Evan flinched. The name of the street hit him. He knew those neighborhoods. He knew what that money meant. He looked at me, his eyes wide, a flicker of something, shame, maybe, before he quickly looked away. Laurel's face hardened. She was about to speak, a rebuttal no doubt prepared. Ding dong! The doorbell. Sharp, authoritative. Laurel's expression instantly dissolved, replaced by a brilliant smile. "She's here." A flurry of activity. Grant stood up. A maid hurried to the door. The tension at the table didn't break. It was just suspended. Constance Vale did not enter a room. She took possession of it. She was in her late 60s, dressed in a sharp midnight blue silk suit, a string of pearls at her neck. Her silver hair was perfect. She smelled of sharp, expensive perfume, something that didn't suggest flowers, but money. Her smile was a thin, precise line, the kind you'd use to sign a multi-million-dollar check or a termination notice. This was Laurel's godmother. This was the chairwoman of the board of Harbor and Field. "Constance, you made it," Laurel gushed, kissing the air near her cheek. "Laurel, Grant, a lovely party," Constance said, her voice like dry ice. Her eyes scanned the room, assessing. They passed over me with no recognition. I was just a piece of the furniture. "A drink, Constance?" Grant offered. "Of course. And let's not let me interrupt. You were dining?" "Just about to," Laurel said, linking her arm through Constance's. "But we must do the white elephant exchange first. It's tradition." A groan went up from some of the cousins, but Laurel shushed them. "This year will be fun. I promise." We were herded back into the living room, near the glittering tree. A bowl of numbers was passed. I drew 14. Laurel, conveniently, drew 20, the last pick, the one with all the power. The game was a blur of bad gifts, bath bombs, a bottle of tequila, a grilling tool set. My snow globe was opened by Uncle Robert. He pulled it from its simple box. Snow globe, he said, forcing a smile. How quaint. Then it was Laurel's turn. Number 20. She scanned the pile of unwrapped gifts. Her eyes landed on the diamond stud earrings Aunt Mary had opened. "Oh, Mary, I'll take those," Laurel said with a grin. Aunt Mary sighed, handing them over. "That means I have to pick again. Fine. I'll take the— Oh, for heaven's sake." She was stuck with the last gift, the snow globe. She held it up. "Well, this is just lovely." Laurel laughed, her victory complete. "Oh, let me see it," she said, taking the globe from Mary. "It's perfectly hideous. Who brought this? Rhea. This has you written all over it." I said nothing. I just watched. Jingle Bell Rock was playing from the recessed speakers, a relentlessly cheerful soundtrack to the quiet hostility. Laurel held the snow globe. She shook it. The cheap glitter swirled around the painted snowman. "Is there cash in the bottom of this thing?" she joked, her eyes scanning the plastic base. "It feels so cheap." Her long, red acrylic nail tapped the base. She saw the seam, the one I had glued back together. "Oh, look," she said, digging her nail in. "It's a gag gift. It opens—" She thought it was a joke. She thought money, or a plastic spider, would pop out. With a small crack, the plastic base popped off in her hand. And from the hollow cavity, a new sound emerged. It was tinny. It was sharp. It wasn't Jingle Bell Rock. It was a voice. The music played on, but everyone heard it. Click. "Adjust it. The investors want green." Grant's head snapped up. His face went ashen. He knew his own voice. "Sign the summary. Grant, I'll handle the rest." Laurel's own voice, clear and cold, filled the space between them. The room went absolutely, profoundly silent. The only sound was the Christmas music and the tiny, looping recording. Click. "Adjust it. The investors want green." Module 1. Foundations of Financial Literacy. This module provides the essential building blocks for understanding personal finance. Module 1. Foundations of Financial Literacy. This module provides the essential building blocks for understanding personal finance. 1.1. The Psychology of Money. Explore the emotional and behavioral factors that influence financial decisions. Understand common biases, like loss aversion and herd mentality, and learn strategies to make more rational, objective choices. 1.2. The Time Value of Money. TVM. The core concept of finance. Learn why $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. This section will cover the basics of compounding interest and discounting, which are crucial for understanding investments and loans. 1.3. Key Financial Statements Personal. The Balance Sheet. Learn to create a personal balance sheet to understand your net worth, assets, liabilities. The Income Statement, Budget. Learn to track your cash flow, expenses, to see where your money is going and identify opportunities for savings. 1.4. Setting Smart. Financial Goals. Learn the framework for setting goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. This turns vague wishes like, "I want to be rich," into actionable plans like, "I will save $10,000 for a down payment in 24 months. Module 2. Budgeting and Cash Flow Management. This module focuses on the practical, day-to-day management of your money. 2.1. Creating a real-world budget. Move beyond simple spreadsheets. Explore different budgeting methods, e.g., 50-30-20 rule, zero-based budgeting, envelope system, to find the one that fits your lifestyle. 2.2. Tracking and optimizing expenses. Learn techniques to identify spending leaks and phantom expenses. Explore apps and tools that automate tracking and categorize your spending. 2.3. Managing irregular income. Strategies for freelancers, gig workers, and salespeople. Learn how to budget effectively when your paycheck varies from month to month. 2.4. Building your emergency fund. Understand the importance of an emergency fund. 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Discuss where to keep it for safety, liquidity, and minimal growth, e.g., high-yield savings accounts. Module 3. Debt and Credit Management. This module demystifies debt and teaches you how to use credit as a tool, not a trap. 3.1. Understanding credit. How credit scores, e.g., FICO, are calculated, what they're used for, and how to read your credit report. 3.2. Good debt versus bad debt. Learn the crucial difference between debt that builds assets, like a sensible mortgage, and debt that funds consumption, like high-interest credit card debt. 3.3 Strategies for debt. Repayment. Compare and contrast popular methods like the debt snowball, paying smallest debts first for psychological wins, and the debt avalanche, paying highest interest debts first to save the most money. 3.4. Using credit cards wisely. How to use credit cards for their benefits, rewards, fraud protection, building credit, without falling into a debt spiral. Includes the golden rule of paying your balance in full every month. Module 4. Introduction to Investing. This module is the gateway to building long-term wealth by making your money work for you. 4.1. Investing versus saving. Understand the fundamental difference and why saving alone is not enough to beat inflation and build significant wealth. 4.2. Risk and return. The fundamental trade-off of all investing. Learn about risk tolerance and how it shapes your investment strategy. 4.3 Asset Classes 101. Stocks, equities, owning a piece of a company. Bonds, fixed income, lending money to a government or company. Cash equivalents, money market funds. 4.4. The Power of Diversification. The only free lunch in investing. Learn why "don't put all your eggs in one basket" is the most important rule for managing risk. Module 5. Investment Vehicles and Strategies. This module covers the specific tools and accounts you use to invest. 5.1 Investment Accounts. Taxable brokerage accounts. The most flexible type of account. Tax-advantaged retirement accounts. Understanding the difference between tax-deferred, like a 401k or traditional IRA, and tax-free, like a Roth 401k or Roth IRA. 5.2. Simple investing with funds. Mutual funds. Baskets of stocks, bonds, managed by a professional. Index funds. A type of mutual fund that passively tracks an market index, e.g., the S&P 500, praised for their low costs and consistent, long-term performance. ETFs, exchange-traded funds, similar to index funds, but trade like stocks. 5.3 Dollar Cost Averaging, DCA. A simple and powerful strategy to invest consistently over time, which reduces risk and removes the emotion of timing the market. 5.4. Target Date Funds. A set-it-and-forget-it option that automatically adjusts your investment mix, stocks versus bonds, to become more conservative as you approach your target retirement date. Module 6. Long-term Financial Planning. This module connects your daily habits and investments to your major life goals. 6.1. Retirement Planning. How much do you really need to retire? Introduce the 4% rule as a guideline for safe withdrawal rates. 6.2. Introduction to Insurance. View insurance as risk management, not an investment. Cover the big four: health, life, term versus whole, disability, and auto home. 6.3. Major life purchases. A framework for making smart decisions about buying a home, rent versus buy affordability, and a car. 6.4. Introduction to Estate Planning. The basics of why everyone needs a will, a living will, and durable power of attorney, regardless of their net worth. Module 7. Behavioral Finance and Staying the Course. This final module reinforces the psychological aspect of finance and building lifelong habits. 7.1. Avoiding get-rich-quick schemes. Learn to identify the red flags of financial scams and speculative bubbles. 7.2. The dangers of timing the market. Why trying to buy low and sell high is a losing game for almost everyone. Emphasize the principle of time in the market, not timing the market. 7.3. Financial media literacy. How to consume financial news without letting it panic you into making bad. Short-term decisions. 7.4. Creating your personal financial plan. A capstone exercise to bring all the modules together. Students will draft a one-page financial plan outlining their goals, budget, debt strategy, and investment plan. Rel, her voice a reedy whisper. Ha, my uncle blurted out, his laugh painfully false, echoing in the dead silence. What a strange toy. Laurel, it sounds just like you and Grant. So realistic. Laurel's eyes were fixed on the plastic base in her hand. Her face, which had been flushed with wine and victory, was now a waxy, stark white. Grant looked like he was going to be sick. Evan was staring at me, his mouth open, comprehension dawning in his eyes. I didn't look at them. I looked at my watch. The glowing green digits, 8:31 p.m. 1 minute, I thought. 1 minute until the timer hits 0. Click. Adjust it. The investors want green. The loop played again, a digital death rattle in the glittering room. My watch read 8:31:59. Click. Adjust it. The investors want green. The tiny, looping voice from the snow globe was the only sound in the room. A digital heartbeat under the veneer of Jingle Bell Rock. Laurel's hand was still frozen on the plastic base, her face a mask of waxy, white shock. Grant looked as if he'd been struck. Rhea, he stammered. What is this? What kind of sick joke? Well, it's not a joke, Grant, I said. The watch face flipped, 8:32:12 p.m. The world split in two. Chime, 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 chime. 4 phones, 4 distinct, panicked alerts. In the dead silence, the sound was as loud as a gunshot. Laurel, Grant, Evan, and Constance Vale, all 4 of them, as if pulled by a string, looked down at their screens. It wasn't a text. It was a push notification, a simple sterile globe icon. Kindness means counting, org is now public. For a second, the notification just hung there, an abstract threat. Constance Vale was the first to move. Her mind was the fastest. She saw the notification. She looked at the gold-embossed place card still sitting on the mantel from dinner. She saw the QR code. She didn't hesitate. She raised her phone. The camera app opened. Constance, don't, Laurel breathed, a pathetic whisper. It's a playlist, a Christmas wish. But Constance wasn't listening. Her phone focused. The link opened. Her face, already a mask of cold fury, sharpened. Her eyes narrowed. She scrolled, her thumb moving with sharp, precise swipes. She was reading the executive summary. She was seeing the 2 columns, adjusted data, real data. Grant, panicked, grabbed his own phone. He scanned his card. Evan, ever the follower, did the same, his face a mask of confusion. Rhea, what is this? I don't... His voice trailed off as the site loaded. Laurel was the last. She scanned hers, her hand shaking so badly it took 2 tries. 4 screens, 4 faces, all illuminated by the cold, white light of my audit. This is fabricated, Grant said, his voice a low growl. He was trying to regain control. This is slander. You faked this. Rhea, you faked these numbers. Faked? I asked, my voice light. You want to talk about faking things, Grant? I lifted my own phone. I wasn't on their Wi-Fi. I was on my own hotspot. I had my own connection. I tapped a single icon. The massive 80-inch television above the fireplace, which had been displaying a placid digital painting of a snowy forest, flashed to black. A new image appeared. Rhea's iPhone, connecting via AirPlay. No, Laurel gasped. I'd paired it when I brought the cookies in. I'd told Laurel I needed the guest Wi-Fi to check on Noelle. She'd given me the password. It took 12 seconds. She was too busy telling the caterer to add more nutmeg. "Grant, the remote!" Laurel shrieked. Grant lunged for it, stabbing at the buttons, but he was on the cable input. He was a CEO. He had no idea how his own technology worked. "It's not cable, Grant," I said softly. And then it was there. My website, kindnessmeanscounting.org. Not on a small phone screen, but 6 feet wide, illuminated in high definition, glowing above the fireplace, brighter than the Christmas tree. The 2 columns, the charts, the bright red line of the actual water wastage, the green line of their lie. And beneath it, the scanned PDF of the internal email. Grant's approval, Laurel's signature, blown up, undeniable. The entire family, aunts, uncles, cousins, were staring, mouths open. This was their dinner theater. "Turn it off! Turn it off! Now!" Grant was slamming the remote, but nothing was happening. In the chaos, I tapped my phone screen again. The website vanished. The screen flickered. It was now a FaceTime call, dialing Noelle. She picked up on the first ring, and the silent, frozen, horrified room was instantly flooded. It was a wall of sound. It was laughter, deep, booming laughter from men, high-pitched shrieks from children. It was music, not the sterile choir, but a vibrant, pulsing salsa beat. It was the sound of joy. Noelle's face appeared, flushed pink, her hair a happy mess. She was wearing a cheap, tinsel halo someone must have brought. "Mom, it's amazing. Mr. Diaz's wife, she made—" "Noelle, honey," I said, my voice cutting through her excitement. The entire room was frozen, staring at the ghost on the screen. The girl who wasn't invited, the child who ruined the atmosphere. She wasn't in the dark. She wasn't alone. She was at the center of a celebration. "Sweetie," I asked, my voice clear and loud, Is it empty there?" Noelle laughed, a full, beautiful, genuine sound that felt like a foreign language in this house. "Are you kidding?" she said. She flipped her camera around. The giant screen was now a portal into 1422 Alder Street. The camera panned. The tiny living room was packed, shoulder to shoulder. I saw Sania Washington, raising a red plastic cup. I saw Tom Kovac, in a paper party hat, deep in conversation with Marco Diaz. I saw kids, so many kids, playing on the floor, sharing a handheld video game. The table was invisible, buried under a mountain of food and foil pans and Tupperware. Noelle flipped the camera back to her own bright, smiling face. "Mom," she said, her voice projecting from the high-end speakers, echoing off Laurel's cold, minimalist walls. "This place isn't empty at all." A sharp snap. Constance Vale had closed her phone. The mask of the polite godmother was gone. Her face was marble. She was not angry. She was not sad. She was executing. She tapped her earpiece. "Sarah," she said, her voice low and lethal, speaking to her assistant, who was no doubt sitting in a black car outside. "Get Arthur Jacobs and the rest of the independent board on a line. Now, get legal. Conference them in." Grant, in a fit of pure panic, found the power button on the side of the television. He slammed his hand against it. The screen went black. The sound of the party, the laughter, Noelle's voice, all of it vanished. The room was plunged back into a silence so heavy it was suffocating. It was too late. The sound was gone, but the image was burned onto all of their retinas. "You." Laurel's voice was not a yell. It was a low reptilian hiss. She took a step toward me. "You traitor." "She poisoned my daughter," Evan suddenly shouted, his voice cracking. He was pointing at me. "You did this, Rhea. You manipulated her. You used our daughter." I turned to my ex-husband. The last flicker of pity I'd ever had for him died. "She was overhearing. Evan, remember? You agreed. You didn't want her here." I turned back to my sister. Her fists were clenched, her perfect red nails digging into her palms. "I'm not a traitor, Laurel," I said. My voice was quiet, a whisper, and it forced everyone to lean in. "I'm the compliance manager. My job is to report. You signed a document attesting to false data. Grant signed it. You stole the bonuses from the plant workers to pay for the filters you lied about." I looked from Laurel to Grant to Evan. "I am compliance, and I am a mother. You declared war on both." As if summoned, a sound. Bizz-t, 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 bizz-t. A chorus of powerful executive-level vibrations. Grant, Laurel, Constance, me. We all looked down. A new calendar invitation, sent by the office of the chairwoman. Subject, urgent, executive session time, 8:45 p.m. now. Location, Zoom, link attached. It was 8:46 p.m. The meeting had already started. Constance was already moving, walking past the untouched plates of food, past the glittering tree. She was done with this party. "Laurel, your study, where is it?" Laurel was numb. She just pointed, a trembling finger, down the hall. "This party is over," Constance announced to the room at large. The cousins and aunts were frozen, like deer in headlights. "Thank you for your hospitality. The rest of you, please, go." It was a dismissal, a purge. "Constance, wait," Grant sputtered, hurrying after her. "This is a misunderstanding. It's a family dispute. Rhea is vindictive." Constance stopped. She turned. "Grant, this isn't a family dispute. This is a material misstatement to our investors. This is wire fraud. This is an SEC investigation. If we are very, very lucky, this is not a misunderstanding." She looked at me. "You, Dalton, you're in this meeting." "Of course," I said. "Am I?" Evan started, looking lost. "Am I in the meeting?" Constance gave him a look of profound, withering pity. "Your supply chain, Evan. You're a witness. Wait here. Don't speak to anyone." She turned and marched down the hall. Grant followed, his face the color of ash. Laurel, moving like a robot, followed him. I paused in the grand archway of the living room. I looked back at the stunned, silent crowd. My family. I gave them a small, polite smile. "If you'll excuse us," I said, my voice clear and light. "We just need to step away to discuss family business." Laurel's study was the opposite of the rest of her house. The living room was a performance of warmth and abundance. This room was a statement of power. It was minimalist, cold, with white walls, a black marble desk, and a single, brutalist painting. There were no family photos. It was a place for executing transactions. Tonight, it was a courtroom. Constance Vale did not sit in one of the plush guest chairs. She took Laurel's high-backed leather throne behind the desk. She opened her own slim silver laptop. Grant and Laurel stood in front of the desk, like chastened employees. Evan lingered by the door, a ghost, unsure of his purpose. I stood to the side, my arms crossed, my posture calm. "We are live," Constance said. The screen of her laptop lit up, a Zoom grid. 3 faces appeared. One was Arthur Jacobs, the board's lead independent director, a man with a reputation for merciless audits. One was Sarah Manning, the other independent director, who ran a massive logistics firm. The third was the corporate general counsel, a man named David, who looked like he hadn't slept in a year. Their faces were not festive. They were tense, grim, and lit by the blue light of their own home offices on Christmas Eve. "Madam Chair," the general counsel began, his voice tinny. "This is highly irregular." "Irregularity is the topic, David," Constance said. "The meeting is called to order. I trust you've all read the materials Ms. Dalton forwarded to you at 8:30 p.m. Arthur Jacobs nodded, his face granite. "I've read them, and I've reviewed the website. I assume this is a credible threat?" "It is not a threat, Mr. Jacobs," I said, stepping forward. Constance gestured for me to take the screen. "It is my report. Ms. Dalton, the floor is yours, Constance said. You have 7 minutes. Summarize the findings for the record. I nodded. I was not nervous. This was my work. This was the one part of my life they couldn't touch. Thank you, Madam Chair. Directors, what you have in front of you is a clear case of material misrepresentation. The issue began with a validated Q4 report from my department showing a 42% overage in wastewater dumping at the Grey Rock facility, a clear EPA violation. Laurel flinched, but said nothing. I will summarize the timeline, I continued, my voice even, measured, the voice I used for audits. First, the methodology of the adjustment. The numbers were not corrected, as CFO Keene claimed. They were manually overridden in the system, and the original data logs were scrubbed. I have a cache file recovery of those original logs. Second, the authorization. The directive to override the data was given by CFO Laurel Keene, and the fraudulent summary report, was digitally signed and authorized by CEO Grant Keene, a copy of which you all have. Grant looked at his feet. Third, the benefit. This adjustment was timed to coincide with our Q4 sustainability report to our private investors, who were promised a 20% reduction in water usage. This action was taken to deliberately mislead them and secure the next round of funding. I paused. I let the words hang in the silent, cold room. And fourth, the risk. This isn't just a fine. This is felony-level wire fraud. This is a direct violation of the SEC rules against deceptive practices. The federal penalties alone could bankrupt the discretionary fund, and the public fallout, if this leaks, will kill our B Corp status and any possibility of a public listing for the next decade. I had spoken for 5 minutes. I stopped. I looked directly into the laptop camera, at Arthur Jacobs. That is the corporate summary, I said. Now, the human one, the why. This fraud was escalated. Leadership knew. Their response was not to fix the violation, but to initiate a cover-up. And when they discovered that my 14-year-old daughter had accidentally overheard the directive being given, Laurel's head snapped up. They moved to silence the only witness they couldn't fire. The entire executive team engaged in a coordinated campaign to pressure me into signing off on the false report, using my own child as leverage. I let my gaze drift from the screen to Laurel, then to Evan. The final move was tonight. A 14-year-old witness was called a snooper, deemed an inappropriate person, and was formally barred from this family's Christmas dinner, not for any misbehavior, but as a final, explicit threat to coerce her mother, the compliance manager, into silence. A profound, heavy silence filled the room. The general counsel looked ill. Arthur Jacobs broke the silence. They used a minor to cover fraud. An allegation, Grant finally roared, his face purple. This is an allegation. Constance raised one perfectly manicured hand. Grant stopped, mid-yell. She looked at me. Her face was impossible to read. It was not sympathetic. It was calculating. The problem was clear. She needed the exit. Ms. Dalton, Constance said, her voice cold steel. You did not orchestrate this presentation merely to inform us of the problem. You have a solution. I do, I said. I had already emailed it to her. Madam Chair, if you'll open the document titled Resolution 1224. Constance clicked. Her eyes scanned the screen. I propose the following immediate actions, I said, narrating the document. 1. The immediate administrative leave, effective immediately, of CEO Grant Keene and CFO Laurel Keene, pending a full, independent, third-party investigation. You can't, Laurel shrieked. 2, I continued, my voice drowning her out. The appointment of myself, Rhea Dalton, as acting chief compliance officer, reporting directly to the board, with full authority to conduct an internal audit and to manage the self-reporting process. A coup, Grant spat. She's staging a coup. This is a power grab. 3. We self-report to our investor group within 48 hours. We control the narrative. We explain that we have discovered the discrepancy, terminated the responsible parties, and are rectifying the situation. And 4. The immediate and full reinstatement of the plant workers' holiday bonus pool to be paid out of the Executive Compensation Fund. "That's our money," Laurel whispered, horrified. "Rhea." A small, pathetic voice from the doorway. Evan. He stepped into the room, his hands trembling. He was looking at me, his eyes pleading. "Rhea, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't understand it was this. I just thought it was numbers. I'm sorry." I looked at my ex-husband, the man who had chosen a comfortable chair at this table over his own daughter. I felt nothing. No anger, no pity, just a vast, cold emptiness. "Don't apologize to me, Evan," I said. "Apologize to the people on Alder Street." I turned back to the screen. Constance was ignoring all of them. "Mr. Jacobs," she said, "your position?" Arthur Jacobs didn't hesitate. "The risk is existential. The fraud is documented. Ms. Dalton's plan is aggressive, but it's the only plan that saves the company. I second the motion for Resolution 12-24. "Sarah?" Constance asked. "I," said Sarah Manning. "It's a mess. This is the only way out." General Counsel? David, the lawyer, sighed. "From a legal liability standpoint, this is the only path that demonstrates immediate and decisive action. It's our only defense." "The motion is on the floor," Constance said. "All in favor?" "Aye," said Jacobs. "Aye," said Manning. Constance raised her own hand. "Aye." "Any opposed?" Laurel and Grant were board members. They had a vote. They just stared, mouths open, utterly broken. They were silent. "The motion carries," Constance declared. "The resolution is adopted." She was already clicking on her keyboard. "I am e-signing the board directive now. It is 8:54 p.m. The leaves for Mr. Keene and Miss Keene are effective immediately. Ms. Dalton's appointment is also effective immediately." She was done. "You can't do this," Grant finally bellowed, a desperate, wounded sound. "This isn't a company. It's a family. You don't betray your family. Rhea, you Judas." Constance was closing her laptop. She did not raise her voice. She didn't even look at him. "A corporation is not a dinner table, Grant," she said, her voice dripping with ice. "You should have remembered that before you played with its money." She stood up. The trial was over. She looked at me. "Ms. Dalton, my car leaves in 90 seconds. I expect your full audit plan and the draft of the investor letter in my inbox by 9 a.m. tomorrow, Christmas morning." "You'll have it by 8, I said. She nodded once. "Good." And she swept out of the room, leaving a vortex of silence in her wake. The general counsel and the board members vanished from the screen. I reached over to Constance's laptop and, with one finger, pressed the end meeting button. The red light on the camera went out. The room was silent, utterly, profoundly silent. Laurel sank into one of the guest chairs, her face buried in her hands. Grant just stood, defeated, his hands hanging limp. Evan was pressed against the wall, as if trying to disappear into the plaster. Outside, the faint sound of Silent Night had started up again. The wind rattled the double-paned glass. The party was over. The family was broken. And the only sound in the frozen, quiet room was the soft, steady click of my own pen, as I took a notepad from Laurel's desk and began to write my audit plan. I finished the last line of my preliminary audit plan and tore the page from Laurel's expensive monogrammed notepad. I folded it and put it in my pocket. Grant was still standing in the middle of the room, a void in a $1,000 suit. Evan was a ghost, pressed against the bookshelf, his face pale and sick. Laurel was the only one who had moved. She was still sitting in the guest chair, but her head was up. Her face was a ruin of smeared mascara and pure, unadulterated hatred. The family mask was gone, burned away. All that was left was the raw, curdled ambition. "Get out," she whispered, her voice a dry rasp. "I'm just leaving. I said. I picked up my coat from the back of the chair where I'd left it. I felt the weight in the inner pocket. Oh, I said, as if I'd forgotten something. One last piece of business. I reached into my coat and pulled out a thick stack of bright red envelopes. They were festive, cheerful, a stark contrast to the cold, white room. I dropped them on the black marble desk. The sound was a soft thud. "What's that?" Grant muttered, his voice hollow. "More evidence?" "This," I said, tapping the top envelope, "is the Alder Holiday Fund." Laurel's eyes narrowed. What? You're paying them off? With what money? You have no money. Rhea, you have my money, my salary." "It's funny you should ask about the money." "Laurel," I said. I picked up the top envelope. "You see, this is a community-funded project." I opened the flap and tilted it. A single, shiny brass key slid out, along with a folded sheaf of papers. It wasn't a corporate document. It was a standard 12-month lease agreement. "That's the key to 1422 Alder Street," I explained. "And this is a 1-year lease, prepaid. There's one for Sanaya, Washington, one for the Diaz family, one for the Kovacs, and one for the Phams." You rented them a house?" Grant said, his voice a confused mumble. "A single house? What is that?" "Not just rented, Grant, leased, for a year. It's a start." Laurel let out a dry, hacking laugh. It was a terrible sound. "You're insane. You can't afford that. You're bluffing. You stole it. You embezzled it." "I didn't have to," I said. I looked her right in the eye. "I used the exact amount you cut from their holiday bonuses. I added the entire Executive Wellness and Retreat Fund that you and Grant approved in October but never used. And yes, I added the last of my savings. I just set a different table than you would have." "You had no authority," Laurel began, rising from her chair. "I do now," I said. I pulled out my phone. "As of 9:00 p.m., per the authority vested in me by the board, my first directive as acting CCO was just posted to the company's internal portal." I read the screen. "Effective immediately. All deferred employee bonuses are to be paid in full by 10 a.m. tomorrow. A new temporary employee benefits policy, funded by the now frozen executive compensation pool, is also in effect. Merry Christmas." Laurel just stared at me. Her lip curled into a sneer. The hatred had found its focus. "You think this is a victory?" she hissed. "You think you're a hero? You gave 4 families, what, a key to a tiny, cold, empty house? You've given them nothing, a gesture, an empty, pathetic gesture. An empty house is still an empty house, you stupid, sanctimonious—" "Oh, it's not empty, Laurel," I said. I tapped my phone. I hit the AirPlay button. Laurel's study had a television, too, a sleek black screen on the wall she used for video conferencing. It flashed to life. It wasn't a spreadsheet. It wasn't my audit plan. It was FaceTime. The room was flooded again with that wall of sound, the laughter, the music, the life. Noelle was on screen, standing on a kitchen chair. The camera was shaking, held by someone else. The tinsel halo on her head was slightly askew. She was holding a plastic microphone that one of the kids must have brought. The tiny living room was a sea of people, all watching her, their faces upturned, smiling. In the corner, I saw it. It was a Christmas tree, made of crumpled-up newspaper. Taped to the wall in a triangle shape, it was covered in drawings, in cut-out paper stars. "I just wanted to say thank you," Noelle was saying, her voice clear and strong over the speaker. To all of you. For coming. My mom told me. My mom said this was a house for people who needed a place to be. And I guess I did too." Sanaya, Washington, in the front, her eyes shining, said, "We all did, baby girl. We all did." And Noelle continued, "We're doing a gift exchange, but all the gifts are old books, because Mr. Kovacs said a good story is better than anything you can buy." There was a cheer. A small boy ran up and hugged Noelle's legs. She laughed, reached down, and hugged him back. The microphone forgotten. It was a community, It was a feast. It was a celebration built from the scraps my sister had tried to throw away. It was the warmest, brightest, richest room I had ever seen. I looked at Laurel. She was staring at the screen. Her face was no longer angry. It was just blank, hollow. She was watching a world she couldn't enter, a joy she couldn't buy, a family that had formed in direct opposition to her. She watched for 1 second more. Then, slowly, with a terrible, final stiffness, she turned her head away. She turned her back to the screen. She couldn't bear to look at it. She couldn't stand the sound of their happiness. I left the FaceTime call running. I let the sound of that joyful, crowded, full house echo off the cold marble of her study. I put on my coat. "You have my report in the morning," I said to her back. I walked out, leaving her there, alone in her office, haunted by the sound of the family she had tried, and failed, to break. I walked out of the study, leaving the sound of the party on Alder Street playing to an empty room. The call was still active, a bright, joyful portal left open in the heart of the wreckage. Laurel hadn't moved. Grant was a statue. I walked down the main hall. The rest of the house was a disaster scene. The party guests, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, were frozen in a state of suspended animation. Some were standing by the dining table, their plates of untouched food congealing. Others were clustered by the door, coats half on, pretending not to have heard. They were trapped between the social obligation to stay and the primal instinct to flee a burning building. They saw me, their eyes, which hours ago had held pity or scorn, now held something new, fear. I was no longer just Rhea, the problematic poor relation. I was the audit. I was the judgment. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't offer a polite word. I walked to the massive, heavy oak door that Laurel had been so proud of. I pulled it open. The cold was a physical thing. It was a relief. The 12-degree air was clean, sterile. It scoured the scent of roasted meat and cinnamon-scented hypocrisy from my lungs. The night was dark, the snow falling in a soft, silent verdict. I stepped onto the slate porch. I was about to pull the door shut when a hand stopped it. Evan. He stumbled out onto the porch after me, coatless. The wind immediately grabbed his thin, expensive party shirt, plastering it to his chest. He shivered, a violent, full-body tremor. But he didn't seem to notice the cold. He was a man watching his lifeboat sink. "Rhea, wait, please." His voice was a pathetic rasp. I turned and just looked at him. I said nothing. The porch light cast a harsh, yellow glow, illuminating the desperation on his face. He was the man who, hours ago, had laughed with my sister while his daughter sat in a cold car. "You have to believe me," he babbled, his words tumbling out, clouded by his own breath. "I didn't know. I swear to God, I thought it was just office politics, a mistake. I didn't know it was that." I just waited. The silence was my response. "Rhea, please say something," he begged. I took a breath. The cold air burned. "What is there to say, Evan? Say you believe me. Say we're okay. Laurel, Grant. They're toxic. They're done. I see that now. I'm done with them." His eyes were darting, frantic. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking past me. Through the tall glass window beside the door, he was looking back into the house. He wasn't seeing me. He was seeing his own reflection, and behind it, the wreckage he had tied himself to. From the porch, we had a clear view into Laurel's study down the hall. The door still open. We could see her. She was alone, standing behind her marble desk, illuminated by the cold blue light of her monitor. She was on her phone, yelling, her face contorted. And as we watched, a new expression crossed her face, a sudden, profound shock. She stared at her computer screen. She typed, a frantic, hammering motion. She stopped. She typed again. She slammed her hand flat on the keyboard. She had been locked out. Evan saw it. He knew exactly what that looked like. It was the digital execution, the finality of it. Constance, from her car or her jet, had just erased her. The access was gone. The power was gone. He turned back to me, his calculation complete. The ship had sunk. He was turning to the only piece of driftwood he could find. "I want to come back," he said, his voice thick. He took a step toward me, his hands raised, as if in surrender. "Ria, I want to come home, with you, with Noel." The words were so predictable, so pathetic. We were good, weren't we? Before this, before them. We can be again. Noel. She needs a family. She needs us. "Sal," I repeated. The word felt like ash in my mouth. "There is no us, Evan." Us was a compromise. Us was me trying to hold together something you had already broken, long before Laurel. I shook my head, a small, tired gesture. "Come back where? Back to this dinner? The one you chose over your daughter? Back to the past? The past where you lied to me for 2 years?" I saw the flicker of his denial, but I didn't let him speak. "You talk about Noelle needing a family. She has a family. She's with them right now, on Alder Street. The people you and Laurel and Grant called numbers on a spreadsheet. The family you left in the cold, so you could have a warm seat at this table." He flinched. The truth was as cold as the air. "Ria, I'll do anything," he whispered. "I'll testify. I'll give you everything. I'll sign whatever you want." "I'm glad to hear that," I said. I reached into the inner pocket of my coat, not the one with my audit notes, the other one. I pulled out a small, plain, business-sized envelope. It was slightly damp from the snow. I held it out to him. He looked at it, confused. "What's this? More data?" "It's the last piece of paperwork for the night," I said. "The only one that matters to you and me." He took it. His fingers were stiff, clumsy from the cold. He fumbled with the flap, pulling out the folded pages. He recognized the letterhead. Our lawyers. "This is," he breathed. "This is the final settlement. The one we were arguing about." "The one you were arguing about," I corrected. "The one you refused to sign for 6 months. The one you were holding up until you knew if your promotion from Grant was secure. The one that kept all our assets tangled." I pulled a simple ballpoint pen from my pocket. I offered it to him. "This one is clean. It severs everything. It gives me the house. It signs over your claim to my pension and my new 401k, the one Constance Vale just authorized." He stared at the signature line. His name, waiting to be written. "Ria, don't do this. Not tonight. It's Christmas." "You already decided what kind of Christmas this was. Evan, all I'm doing is signing the paperwork." I pushed the pen into his hand. "Sign it," I said. My voice was not angry. It was just final. "It gives you the visitation schedule you asked for. You will still be her father. That is a biological fact, and I will never take that from her." I leaned in, just an inch. "But you will never again stand between her and her right to be in the room. You will never again trade her for a seat at the table. You don't get to use her for your comfort. You don't get to use me for your lifeboat." He looked from the paper, to me, to the window where his former life was in flames. He took the pen. His hand was shaking. A terrible, rattling tremor. He turned, bracing the folded papers against the cold brick wall of Laurel's perfect, empty house. He uncapped the pen. I didn't need to watch him sign. The decision was already made. I turned my back to him. I walked down the 3 stone steps, my boots crunching on the thin layer of fresh snow. I heard it behind me. It wasn't a sob. It wasn't a word. It was a sound. The hard, dry, desperate sound of a ballpoint pen scratching against heavy paper, digging into the fibers. It sounded like a skate blade, cutting a final, sharp line on a frozen lake. I didn't wait for him to finish signing. I didn't need to see the stroke of the pen. I left him on the porch, a shivering, coatless man, clinging to the last piece of paper that connected our lives. I didn't look back. My old Honda felt like a sanctuary. The drive to Alder Street was a passage from one world to another. The snow was falling heavily now, thick, wet flakes that muffled the sound of the engine, blanketing the city in a profound quiet. The streets here were not the manicured, icy boulevards of Laurel's neighborhood. They were real. The houses were small, but the lights in their windows looked warm. I parked behind Sanaya Washington's beat-up minivan. For a moment, I just sat, the engine off, watching the snow pile up on my windshield. The war was over. The shouting, the audits, the betrayals. It was all just static now. The silence in the car was absolute. I stepped out. The cold air felt different. It wasn't an assault. It was just air, clean. I walked up the short, shoveled pathway of 1422 Alder. I could hear the life inside before I even reached the door. A muffled bass line, a ripple of laughter. Before my hand could even touch the wood, the door was pulled open. It was an explosion, a wave of heat, sound, and light washed over me. A physical force. It was like opening an oven. The small house was radiating a dense, humid warmth that smelled of chicken soup, spicy tamales, cinnamon, and damp wool. Noelle stood in the doorway. She was not the pale, defeated child I had left in the car. Tracing frost on the glass, her face was flushed a deep, healthy pink. Her hair was a frizzy halo, and she was still wearing the ridiculous tinsel crown someone had put on her head. She looked vibrant. She looked powerful. She grinned, a wide, uncomplicated, beautiful smile. "You're late, Mom," she said, her voice bright, easily carrying over the noise. "We were about to send out a search party." "Sorry," I said, stepping over the threshold. "I had to finalize some paperwork." The house absorbed me. I was pulled into a sea of people. Marco Diaz. His face split in a huge smile, clapped me on the shoulder and pressed a red paper cup of warm, spiced cider into my hand. Sanaya Washington saw me from across the room and blew me a kiss, not missing a beat in the story she was telling Tom Kovac. They were both roaring with laughter. This wasn't a charity case. This wasn't a soup kitchen. This was a party. I navigated through a knot of children playing on the floor with a stack of old library books. I found the dining table, a scarred wooden thing that was buried under a glorious, chaotic mountain of foil pans, mismatched Tupperware, and bakery boxes. My heavy wool coat felt out of place, like armor in a sanctuary. I shrugged it off, letting it fall onto a chair already piled high. From my coat pocket, I pulled out a small, dark-stained block of wood. I'd bought it at a craft store months ago, thinking I'd put it on my desk at work. It was simple, with a single word carved into it in white, flowing script, reserved. I found a small, clear space on the table, right next to the now empty soup pot. I set the sign down. Noelle had followed me, weaving through the crowd. She looked at the sign, her head tilted. "For who?" she asked. Her voice was light, half joking, but I could hear the tiny tremor beneath it, the last flicker of that old, conditioned worry, the fear that a seat might be offered, and then taken away. I turned to look at her. I saw the child in the car, and the brave young woman in the tinsel crown, both at once. "For you," I said, my voice quiet, but steady enough for her to hear, "and for anyone who was ever told they didn't belong at the table." Her eyes locked on mine. She searched my face. She saw no tricks, no conditions. She just nodded. Once, a small, definitive movement. She understood. This wasn't a sign to keep people out. It was a sign that promised a place was being held. My phone vibrated in my jeans pocket. Not a text, a heavy, insistent, corporate buzz. I pulled it out. An email. From the office of the chairwoman. Subject: Board Resolution to 24, executed. The body was short. "This email confirms your appointment as Acting Chief Compliance Officer, Harbor and Field, effective 0.01 a.m., December 25th. Your new credentials will be active at that time. Your 9 a.m. call with legal is confirmed. See Vale. 0:01 a.m., Christmas morning, the official minute my new life would begin. I didn't feel a rush of victory. I didn't feel triumph. I just felt a click. the sound of a final, heavy tumbler falling into place. I pressed the button on the side of the phone. The screen went dark. I silenced the ringer and put the phone face down on the table. Next to the reserved sign, the audit could wait. 9 a.m. could wait. Someone had left a clean bowl and a spoon by the soup pot. I picked them up. I scraped the last of the chicken and vegetable soup into the bowl. I took a spoonful. It was hot. It was real. I just stood there, letting the warmth spread through me. I listened. I heard the sound of the Diaz kids, singing Feliz Navidad, loud and wonderfully off-key. I heard the sound of Sania's deep, full-throated laugh as she argued with Tom Kovac about football. I heard the sound of the keys to this house, the ones from the red envelopes, jingling as Marco Diaz tossed them to his wife. The imaginary camera in my head, the one that had been watching me, judging me for years, began to pull back. It moved away from me, away from the table. It drifted backward, past the newspaper Christmas tree, the one covered in crayon stars. It passed the last empty chair at the table, a mismatched metal folding chair someone must have brought from their own home. It was being pulled out, offered to a woman I didn't know, who was just arriving, stamping snow from her boots. Noelle came and sat in the chair next to me. She had her own bowl of soup. She nudged my arm, a simple, solid, real gesture. I turned to look at her. She smiled, a small, perfect smile, her eyes bright over the rim of her bowl. "Our house isn't empty anymore, Mom." I smiled back. "No, baby, it's not." The camera passed through the glass, through the frost patterns on the window. It was outside now, in the silent, falling snow, looking in. Inside, a small beige bungalow on a dark street, blazing with light and noise and warmth, full to the brim. Fade to black. Cut. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Please drop a comment below with your city or country and share your thoughts on Ria's decision. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and if you really love this story, please hit that hype button to help it get heard by more people.